Yep.
But because of that label, and by the way, my business partner at that point, very shortly, ended up leaving and going back to the firm that we originally met each other at, which
Hmm.
was Salters. So I was kind of on my own. And so the good news about having Death Row now on my roster was it attracted other business. So, I quickly had a lot of record labels call me and say, "Hey, can you work so and so and such?" And then all of a sudden, I had all this business. So it worked very well for a while, and that's kind of how I bumped into Hall and Oates. I was asked to work an album called Our Kind of Soul in 2004, and they needed somebody that knew how to work with urban publications as well as mainstream ones at that time. And so that was sort of my intro to those guys, and I
Hmm.
worked that record, and then I ended up doing a lot more than urban publicity because they were like soul songs, like songs from the Sound of Philadelphia.
Yep.
And that really started and cemented my relationship with those guys. In 2007, when Daryl had the idea for Live from Daryl's House, uh, he just leaned into me, and we started booking the show together because at first he said, "Look, I just want to perform some of my hits and sit on my deck with T-Bone Walk, and we'll just put a camera on myself and I'll put it on the internet." I mean, like he just came up with that in 2007. This is pre-streaming,
Yep.
this is when Netflix was sending DVDs out. This guy's streaming.
Yeah.
So it's like amazing. So, long story short, to this day, which is what, 17 plus years, 17 and a half years later, um, the show is still booked by Daryl and myself. As a matter of fact, we were
Hmm.
talking about it this morning. And it was, to give Daryl credit, I mean, he really was, a pioneer on music series
Yeah.
shows strictly because, it's so unique. It's not a push show, it's a pull show. It's like, here is Howard Jones. He's coming to my house for the first time, or now we have a purpose built venue called Daryl's House in Pauling, New York. But
Hmm.
originally it started out of his house. So artists would come over, he'd meet him for the most part for the first time. So it's like this blind date. And they just kind of worked out in advance what they were going to play. But everything you see on that show, that's happening.
Hmm.
Like there's no like take 4, take 5. Like it's like, let's go. How does that sound? Okay, let's do it for real. And then that's it. Warts and all, let's move on to the next song. Now it had to be developed over the years. I mean, we used to sort of do it in real time, like we tape songs, and then everybody would eat, and that's how the food segment came along because we had to feed everybody. So it was
Yeah.
just out of necessity. So we just started calling local restaurants, like the local rib place or the local whatever. Hey, can Vinny's Deli caters the show to this day. It's a local restaurant in Pauling, New York. And for those of you who don't know Pauling, New York, it's a small town off Route 22 in upstate New York. And there's not a lot of activity there. It's not New York City. It's not Los Angeles. It's a
Hmm.
small, so which is even which posed even more challenges getting artists up to Pauling. When
Yeah.
you're dealing with the Smokey Robinsons of the world, they're like, "Well, where is this?" It's like,
Hmm.
"Oh, it's just a little north of New York City." So we've been able to get 90 episodes to date done, and we've had. I mean, I can't even name them all. You could probably name them all, but just this past season, we've had Howard Jones, uh, Glenn Tilbrook, who is going on tour with Daryl this year. Uh, uh, we had Robert Fripp, who actually is a long term relationship.
Yeah. With
Has a
Daryl.
long term relationship with Daryl, obviously, since Sacred Songs and the work that they did together in the 70s. But for the most part, even with Howard and Glenn, those are two artists that Daryl had never met before.
Hmm.
Well, we did have Glenn with Squeeze opened for Hall and Oates in 2020, and then COVID happened, and we resumed. We had our last date in Madison Square Garden on February 28th, 2020. COVID happened.
Yep.
Resumed the tour in August of 21. So it was like a year and a half went by, and we just started the tour again. So that's crazy. So that's when those guys really first met. But for the most part, these are artists. I mean, and then there's a lot of artists that aren't heritage artists. We just had, Andy Grammer on. Daryl never met him before. And look, I remember booking Chromeo on the show like 15 years ago and trying to explain to Daryl, I'm like, yeah, this is an electro funk like dance group from Canada, And the episode went so well that I got a call from Bonnaroo saying, we want this on stage. So there's Daryl and Chromeo playing I Can't Go For That in front of like thousands and thousands of kids throwing glow sticks at his head, by the way, while playing a set at the midnight show in Bonnaroo. So like all sorts of things have stemmed from that show. But anyway, just not to digress. So I started booking the show. We had it on the internet for a while. We attempted syndicated TV. It bombed. Still remained online. And then I called a guy named Rick Krim, who was running VH1 at the time. And I said, look, I know you have already passed on the show because everybody passed on the show. Daryl and I sat in front of like 15 different networks and every one of them passed. So we just kept it online. So Rick said, hey, look, it's not for VH1 right now, but we were more into the reality shows, but we were starting a new digital channel called Palladia. Call this guy Ben Zurier. So immediately I called Ben and we cut a deal where we licensed shows to him, and it took off. And Palladia became MTV Live, and then we ended up actually airing on VH1 as well. So the thing started, once it went on broadcast, it just reached a broader appeal, but it's always been an internet show. So anyway, long story short, the show is still, the series is still happening right now, and we're just on YouTube. So just Google Daryl Hall on YouTube and you'll see, all those episodes there. And it's just sort of the natural evolution of the show is just to come back to the online sphere. But when we were first starting out, there was no YouTube to put it on.
Yeah.
So, it's done quite well. And I feel like it's helped Daryl Hall definitely, be shown in a light that, the only thing really people knew about the visual of Daryl Hall was what they saw in concert, or if you were growing up in the MTV era, which I'm a Gen Xer, you saw the videos. But Daryl's House really exposed how incredibly talented he is and how diverse and multi-talented, his skills are. I mean, for him to go to every different genre and just easily navigate through that, that's very specifically Daryl Hall. Like, you could replicate the format of the show, but you wouldn't have him.